Hi, everybody. Thank you, Renee, for your introduction. And as principals, I mean, we're totally aware that you all might be multitasking right now, and hope that you are able to take a little bit of time for yourself today to try to get some learning between the interruptions. Feel free to turn your cameras on if you want, or leave them off. Feel free to interrupt at any time with questions. This is going to be really informal, and we're hoping that we can just share a little bit about some things that we're doing in our setting that might spark some ideas for you, and maybe we can get some ideas from the people that have joined us today. Our school is a primary school, so we serve preschool, kindergarten, first grade, and that's why we put that. We had to choose a younger age range on the call for our group, but we think a lot of these ideas might actually, hey Zach, might actually carry over with older students as well. So anyways, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt.
And we just have put together, we're going to talk about the things that we are currently doing in our building. And so by no means is this an exhaustive list. It's just some of the things that we have implemented with our teachers and with our students that hopefully you'll be able to maybe find one new idea that you are able to, implement quickly.
Another thing is our slide deck has been linked to on the grid. There's like a link, or if you hover, it talks about like resources or something. And then when you go to that page, it has this slide deck embedded as a link within that page. And there are several links within the deck. So we'll point those out when we get to them. So I think we better get started, or we're going to run out of some time. So if you haven't heard of ACEs, they are adverse childhood experiences. And there's one of the statistics around Kentucky that we are at the top of the list when we don't want to be is that we have the highest percentage of students or children below the 5 and under with at least 2 adverse childhood experiences. And those adverse childhood experiences can impact your brain. Like there's a lot of neural work, and there's some really good resources out there if you want to learn more about that. A book that we would recommend is What Happened to You. Timo, do you remember Bruce Perry? Is that his name?
Yes, Bruce Perry and Oprah wrote that book together.
And it reads really like a conversation. It's an easy read. If you want to learn more about ACEs and how trauma can affect children. Now, not all ACEs result in trauma. And so one of the things that we've done as a school is we've tried to keep track of what those ACEs are, because they culminate and they don't go away. So we have created a document that's for each class where we keep track of if something happens, like if a parent is incarcerated, if we learn about substance abuse or addiction in the home, if they become homeless or any of those factors, then we keep track of that. Pamela, do you want to talk through
Yeah, it's just a really great shared resource, especially because of the age of our students, that it allows, the multiple teachers who interact with those students within a given day. Our specialist teachers, instructional assistants, interventionists, they all then are able to have that information when they're making instructional decisions, but also just in the way that they're building relationships with kids and knowing what kids might be walking into their groups with each day.
And then we can look at it and say, well, gosh, we have this kid here who might have 6 ACEs already. And we're not seeing any outward behavior, but we may need to keep an eye to make sure that they're not internalizing things and having issues internally. We can also look for trends across the school or classrooms that, like, gosh, in this class, we have a really high percentage of students who've been removed from their homes, or whatever that trend may be, and our counselors can use that information to help in planning instruction and supports and groups. So actually, I want to say this, I think here is also, this is a link, right, to a blank one?
No, it's actually it may be. Yeah, I think it is an actual.
Okay.
or maybe it's the strengths assessment. No, it's the strengths assessment.
Okay.
So, and we can add some more links in it or send you all templates. If that's something that you're like, oh man, I would love to have this document, feel free to email us and we would be happy to share some of these link resources with you as well. So the strengths assessment is something that we started last year. And so we do this 3 times a year. Our teachers, and this is all based on their observational data. So we wait until about mid-September when we do this initially in the fall. We do it again in the winter and then again at the end of the year. And so teachers just answer these questions about students in their classroom. And it's on a scale in terms of like never, occasionally, or never, sometimes occasionally, frequent, or are very frequent. And so they answer those questions. And again, just like the ACEs document, this does allow a teacher, as well as our counselors and ourselves, to see trends across classrooms where students may be lacking certain skills and instruction needs to take place intentionally for those. We also use this to make sure that we have the right kids on our radar. So we try to do as much preventative behavior intervention as possible. And so when we're looking at this, if we see students who, because of the way the teachers answer, if they're kind of like danger, danger responses to the questions, they'll turn orange or red depending on the severity. So we are looking at those kids who might have lots of orange or lots of red next to their name to say, hey, is this a kid who is on our list? Do we have someone who is building relationships? Are we in there positively reinforcing? Do we need to have some sort of positive behavior chart for them? And so it just helps us make sure that the kids who are kind of rising to the top when teachers are coming to us about individual students are the ones that we're making sure on that list and that we're not missing any of those kids.
Right. Another like a piece, this piece of information here we actually use with students, or this template. And we have a couple of different ones. So this one is one that we use within our school building. We have another one that we use that's reflections on the bus. So if we have a misbehavior on the bus, then some of those things that would look a little different is it might be like, well, this could cause an accident. This could cause the bus driver to get into an accident, which would be dangerous. So, and it's things like not sitting in your seat could be a factor on the bus. So, at the top, we have choices like I had to cool down, I had to go to the office, I had to have detention. We rarely use detention. Once in a blue moon, that becomes something that the parent requests, or we have a student that maybe is wanting to have work avoidance and be suspended, like they're asking to be suspended or something. And so we'll do a detention instead to kind of break that to go the other way. But then we can also draw other things here. So the student then works through, they circle what happened, or draw if it's not on the list, and then what happened because of that misbehavior. And then they write next time, or we scribe or for them, next time, what will I do instead, using that positive language. And so these reflections have helped because it takes time then for the child to think about it, the teacher or administrator to support the child through like what I would do differently next time. And these also go home with the student. So we do, again, these for buses as well. And something that honestly has helped us a lot as a staff is educating our bus drivers around the trauma. We've talked through them with the trauma that comes onto the bus, and we've trained them on some of those pieces and giving them some scenarios of what we've learned about our students as examples. So we have seen a decrease in bus referrals since we started educating our bus drivers on how to positively reinforce the behaviors and making them aware of the trauma that walks on their bus every morning, and also doing the referrals or the reflections. Hey, Tanya.
So this is a tool that we actually use initially with our preschool program. Was gathering the social developmental history. And so we actually just expanded it this last school year to our kindergarten students. So any kindergarten student who comes to us having not already been in our preschool program, we are asking families to fill out our social and developmental history. This is where we get some of that information about any of those possible adverse childhood experiences. It tells us a little bit more about who they're living with, what was their experience like like, do they have early, childhood illness or something like that that could just impede being able to come to learn and ready to focus and do what we need to do in the classroom. And so this has given us a lot of insight. Again, the form has a place where we ask some specific questions, but then it also kind of is open for parents to share what they feel comfortable with. Do they have connections to community resources that are involved in their family? And then our counselor is able to use this information as well to build relationships with those families, as well as to see, are there things that she may need to pull kids together in small groups to be able to target for them that they're dealing with.
Oh, wait. Oh, that linked to it. So I wasn't.
Yeah, so you can see, like, we ask about family history, have the children, experience any of the specific stressful events, who has custody, then kind of their health and development, their early development. I always enjoy the question there about, like, has your doctor talked to you about any of these specific health concerns? Because I feel like that's where we find out that information, like, oh, my doctor is concerned about my child being tongue-tied. Okay, well, we need to get our speech paths involved. And so it just clues us into something that, had we not have asked for this information, families may not have willingly volunteered. And then, do you have concerns about their development in any of those specific areas?
Another thing that we, in the past, we still do actually use Second Step, which is a research-based social emotional learning that we started in preschool and then gradually added to kindergarten and then also first grade. Since we started Second Step, we actually also have moved to a literacy curriculum that embeds social emotional learning. And we have found, honestly, more power in having the social emotional learning embedded within your content areas. I know that there's actually the Kentucky Center for Mathematics has created some ways to embed social emotional learning into mathematics in a really nice free resource that they have. The curriculum that we use for literacy is also free and is called EL Education. And that the social emotional learning piece of it was one of the things that we found to be the most powerful. So it actually starts in kindergarten with learning play commitments, as they're very, like, their whole first unit of instruction for the first 9 weeks is toys and play. So they're learning about creating toy commitments for playing together. They also learn, especially in first grade, they learn a lot more about tools and work in their first unit, and they do a lot to learn about initiative, collaboration, perseverance, and responsibility, and habits of character. So they learn those in kindergarten, but they dig into those a little more in first grade. They learn things like how to give feedback in kindergarten. They learn how to give feedback to a peer on their writing by using empathy. And so they actually learned that when you give feedback to somebody, they should feel better than before you gave them feedback. It should be helpful, it should be kind, and it should be specific. So that's something that we've seen huge progress with our social emotional learning and the ways that our children are responsible and a little more independent. And a lot of the things that we've seen COVID take a real hit on, it's kind of come at the right time.
A few years ago, as a school, our students were introduced to multiple different mindfulness strategies. And the students then, working with our counselor at the time, voted on what they felt were the top 3, the ones that they liked the most. And so we adopted these as our school-wide mindfulness strategies. And so all of our students, when they're entering, as well as, the beginning of the year as review, we practice these strategies every day. And then something that we do that we'll talk about is crew gathering. And we practice this every single day as a group. So the way that we end our day, the student who's helping us gets to choose which of these strategies we're going to practice. campus. And you will see students and staff using these strategies throughout the course of a day, whether it maybe is just they're taking a brain break, or a child may be having a hard time in a situation and a teacher may prompt them, let's do a mindfulness strategy right now. Our students know lots of other mindfulness strategies. These are just kind of the big three that we use school-wide and the language that we use across our building.
So Pamela mentioned crew gathering, and this started when we were in person and regular school before COVID. We would have everyone dismissed from our cafeteria. And at the end of the day, we would have this, what we call crew gathering, as a meeting, to a school-wide meeting to celebrate the good things that have happened that day. And a lot of schools, I think, start sometimes with a morning assembly, and we don't. We start kind of as a soft start in the morning, give our kids a chance to build those relationships with those teachers. That's a time when you can have like some center-based learning and some social options in the morning, and getting a chance to have conversations with kids one-on-one about how their night was. And we end our day with a school-wide meeting. And then that way, we do a lot of positives, like we have blue slips and green slips. A blue slip is a positive office referral, and students get to come to the office. We fuss over them. They get like a bracelet that they wear. That's the kind like you get if you go to the fair, or like if you are 21 and go to some kind of a festival to let you know you can have your drink at the bar. It's just those like little rip things. They're really cheap, and they come with patterns. So you can buy a ton of them for cheap, and the kids love them. So
there is a link in here, Suzanne, if you went to a blank template of the things that we talk about each day.
Right. So the blue slips, we just now, our secretary, she's amazing at she has the great voice and enthusiasm every time a kid gets to come down to the office for a blue slip or a green slip. And the blue slips, she's now made a thing outside of our office where it's got like spotlights and a background, and it's like they get to take their picture, and she puts it on social media if they come to the office now. So we do start with our mindfulness strategies. We have student helpers that help us. We now record this and send it out to all the classrooms instead of doing it live. On Thursdays, we talk about gratitude. Every Thursday, we do Thankful Thursdays. We also incorporate sign language. We are in Danville, so we have the Kentucky School for the Deaf. So we have a lot of students who have deaf parents and are fluent in sign. So we use sign language with our school mission. We go over birthdays. We introduce new students, or we talk about students that may be moving. We read our green slips and our blue slips, which are the positive office referrals. We sometimes incorporate like some learning or pictures we saw that day. On Fridays, we have crew members of the week, and that each class is like their student of the week. We make a fuss over those. We talk about like what will happen tomorrow. Like on Fridays, we don't have school for 2 days, or if we're going to have like an assembly or a family event or something, we mention those, and then we sign at the end together. So that's sort of the flow of what we do in our meetings, and the ways that we celebrate that together to build some community.
So part of that social emotional piece is, reading kids, knowing when they are in a place where they need a break, whether it's because they've requested a break or because we can just see that as adults in them and it's necessary. And so we do have a sensory room in our building, and we know that not everybody is fortunate enough to have that, but we do have, there are some things that wouldn't have to be in a special space of its own that you would be able to have maybe in, some corners or, some designated spaces in a building. And so in this room, we do have a sand table, and I will say that that's probably the top requested by the students in our building when they get to go to the sensory room and take a break there. It's because they want to go and they want to do the time in the sand tray. And we also have a trampoline. I love that it's got the handle on it for our kids because they can just hold on and bounce out all of those wiggles that they might have going on, or anger they may be feeling, or frustration. We also have one of the rollers, and that's always a really, if you're not familiar with that device, your kids who have some sensory needs, either they really love it or they don't. There's not really generally a whole lot of in between on that. And then we do have a swing as well, and that is super helpful for our kids who just need some of that sensory input and need that darker space where, sometimes we turn the lights off in there if that's what a student needs, but it just gives them a calm, quiet space to be able to go and take a break, to be able to calm their body, calm their mind, and then be able to transition back to the classroom. Something that you can't see in this picture is we do have a timer on the wall. When kids do go into the sensory room, it's not a free-for-all. The timer is set and they understand that expectation that, when the timer goes off, then their time there is over and we're going to work back to going back to their classroom at that point.
There's also a projector on the wall. And so some students prefer something like that. So the projector, we can turn the lights out and the projector like has these soothing images that sort of like fish that swim and things like that that they can watch. And some special lighting. We've also worked to try to have some supports for students so they don't always have to leave the room. So like, for example, every classroom has a container of kinetic sand that they can use in the classroom with students, and every classroom has a visual timers and visual schedules. So now let's say that a child isn't in a place where the sensory room is going to work and they are screaming or spewing profanity or aggressive and need to be removed from their classroom. We have what's called the calm down room. This is not a situation where a student is ever placed in here alone. It's always with an adult that is helping them to calm and to de-escalate. And it's just an empty room, and it's a safe room that we can go with students. And in that room, we have visuals to help students know that they need to have, basically, they need to have safe hands, they need to be sitting, and a quiet voice to be able to leave the calm down room with us. So we have recently gotten better at keeping data of when this needs to happen. So we have a QR code that we scan on our phones if we go into that room with a student. And there's a survey that asks a lot of questions so that we can have data that we then can use with the mental health professionals that are supporting that student. If we're collecting data for RTI, if we're trying to prevent those behaviors and find the antecedent, we can find patterns. And it really helps us to know what's going on with those students. So.
And then we are very fortunate. So our district does partner with the local pediatricians in town. They come, they actually round here every day. A nurse practitioner or one of the doctors will come and see our students. And we're able to work that scheduling out through our school nurse. But students are able to be seen, whether it's a regular routine, it could be a physical, could be that they have an asthma plan and they need to have regular appointments for that. So they're able to be seen here at school. It could also just be a sick visit. And so that expedites that process for a parent. I have a sick kid, they're able to be seen at school. They've already seen the doctor, prescriptions called in. I just have to pick them up from school, pick up that prescription, and we can head on home for the kiddo to get some rest and feel better. So we have been fortunate to have that the last couple of years. And then we also have some mental health providers. And so we do have a school wellness counselor who does therapy with our students. We also, and that's in addition to our school counselor. And then we also have two social workers who provide therapy as well to students in our building and as well as the district. And so those two those two social workers I've referenced also are able to work with our families. And so that is a nice piece that we don't typically have in the school setting, where these individuals, because of the way that we're able to contact with them, are able to go into homes. They are able to meet with families there. They're able to work with not just the student and their needs, but the whole family needs, and to be able to work collaboratively with us and that family to support the student. And sometimes the family needs specifically that are impacting what's happening with the student in the classroom.
We also have a psychiatrist that our district has just started contracting with, that we can use when we have families that are not able to find a prescriber when they're in that situation. And that has helped tremendously, because there are times when it's very, very hard now to find psychiatrists. Pediatricians are willing to write prescriptions for things like ADHD. But then when it gets a little more complicated, if you have a student that might have need something for mood, or we need more expertise because we're not sure what's going on with the student, the psychiatrist can do observations in addition to, of course, the school psychiatrist. This is a licensed child psychiatrist. And he's been able to help us with students as well. And that runs through, there's a system. So you don't just get to ask for the child psychiatrist. So you go through the system and you work your way through the school counselor, the wellness counselor, the district lead on that, and then the child psychiatrist would be the last resort for that help.
And having that psychiatrist available to us also helps when we do have students who have to go to an inpatient facility. If you've had a student before who has had to spend some time, when they transition out, they're usually, if they're prescribed something, it's for a short period of time with the idea that they're going to be able to be seen by someone outside to continue that regimen or make changes to it. And so what we often find is that those students come back to us and families as well as us are very blindsided by what that treatment plan may look like. And then the time frame in order for them to be able to get in to see a psychiatrist to continue that regimen or continue to see them and make changes to that medication, they can't get in a timely fashion to be able to continue that. And then we see kids who end up coming off medication because they can't be seen. And so this has alleviated some of those problems as well for our students in our district.
All right, and we don't have any more slides or anything, so we can open it up for ideas from you all or questions you may have or things that are working for you.
Thank you. Great information. Are there any questions? And since we're a small group, you can just unmute and ask our presenters any questions that you have. We have about 3 minutes left.
Sorry, I really loved your guys' reflection sheet. Is there any way that I can get a copy of that? Because I think that's something that my kids could definitely benefit from.
Yeah, we can do that. Just if you want to shoot us an email, I don't think it's a little complicated. I'll say this because it's made in Boardmaker. So those images are from Boardmaker, and then we kind of copy and paste them and put them into that document. And then, so you'll have to, it's harder to edit then. So if there's something, but we're welcome, we can give you what we have. We can also give you the bus one. And when I don't have what I need on there, I just use the other.
Okay, and what district are you guys with?
Danville, I just put my email address in the chat box.
Okay, perfect.
I'd love to hear if there's anyone who has strategies or resources that you're using that are different than what we shared.
I have a quick question. Resources, I can talk just a second too, but do you guys, maybe I missed it. I am trying not to multitask. How does this information and the documentation and all the stuff that you guys keep track of feed your special ed process? Is there a, you mentioned extra counselors and the special ed teachers, if there's a kid that an EBD identification or something like that, does this all tie into a system that's already in place, or does it drive that system for you guys?
It does tie into that. So if we have, for example, we have a student right now that is in referral, and he is a student that has had to use the calm down room quite a bit. So all of that documentation, every time he goes to the calm down room, and the aggression that we see from those behaviors and the frequency and the duration are all documented automatically from that. When we take him to the calm down room, for example, is a way that is documented.
And is there a responsibility of that documentation and stuff with those people that you mentioned, those extra support staff, or does the regular classroom teacher? One of the reasons I ask, I guess, is that oftentimes it's like a classroom teacher's got 5 million things on their plate, right? And then they get a kid who has several ACEs or whatever type of thing they're bringing into that classroom. And so now that teacher with 5,000 things on their plate needs to create a behavior chart and needs to create this and needs to have a communication timeline with the family and all. So do you use those extra support staff for like documenting the time in a sensory room or stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. So whoever is the adult who might take the child to the calm down room specifically, whether it is a support teacher, a classroom teacher, myself, or Suzanne, we are the ones who complete that log at that time. So that way we can talk about what happened during that time and how it resolved itself. And so any adult has access to do that who is in there. We do have a special education teacher who works specifically with some of our behavior students, those who may be identified with specific IEP goals related to social emotional, but it could be students who are in referral who we're doing some preventative work with, or just RTI in terms of gathering that data. And so she would be someone who we are having actually tally some of that information in terms of like, how many times did they have to go to the sensory room? Did you have to respond to that classroom and support that classroom teacher during that time? And so we're doing it in a very old school paper pencil kind of way on her daily schedule, but it is enough. It's a quick shorthand that those of us who need to know are able to track what's happening and how often we're doing it. But in terms of the behavior. So for example, the reflection sheets, anything like that, we do have a system that that information is cataloged and gets entered by one of our office ladies into a data sheet that we just keep for our school data as it relates to that. And we're able, again, to pull all of those things should it come time for a referral or for RTI purposes to be able to upload that information. So we have a lot of moving parts and a lot of systems in place for that it's not just one person.
Right.
That we are collaborative in terms of how we talk and communicate across roles.
And like Zach, the classroom teacher is really almost never the person that leaves with the student because they've got to teach the classroom. So
Right.
those other people that support are the ones that are taking care of the documentation. And we've tried to make it as quick and easy by just scanning. You scan it on your phone and you take care of it while you're there. So it's not paperwork you have to do later. So we've tried to make it as low of lift because we were having a hard time getting the paperwork done otherwise. So, and that special education teacher helps a lot with, she does like helping with the behavior plans and the behavior charts that might need to be individualized because she has a specialty in doing that. So she's able to kind of look at a bigger system and something she may have used for another student and modify it. So I don't know if that helps.
Sorry for the logistics questions. Thank you.
Oh, that was help. Thanks.
And that's
Yes.
over the course of the last multiple years that we have put all of the, gotten to these things. So, it definitely takes time in figuring out the systems and the processes.
All right. Wow. Well, thank you. And there's a link to resources. So I'm not sure if your presentation has been uploaded yet, but that's another way for you to stay connected. And again, both of the presenters said feel free to reach out and email them. Thank you both so much. This was another great presentation. I've been in presentations with Suzanne before, and I mean, this is wonderful. Thank you so much.